Hi, let me start by asking you something. Have you ever wondered why we actually have thoughts? I don't mean just what we think about, but why our brain even works the way it does, why it spends so much energy thinking, remembering, imagining. What's the point? Well, that question is really at the heart of something called functionalism in psychology. Functionalism is one of the early schools of thought in psychology. It came after structuralism and it took psychology in a different direction, where structuralism was all about breaking the mind down into its smallest parts. Functionalism said, okay, but what is the purpose of all this mental activity? Why do we have it in the first place? So, now, first, what exactly is functionalism? In simple words, it's the idea that psychology should focus on what the mind does and how it helps us adapt to our environment. Functionalists wanted to know the function of mental processes, why we think, why we feel emotions, why we make decisions, and how all of that helps us survive and succeed in the situations we face every day. A huge influence here was Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. Darwin's work in biology made people realize that just like our physical traits evolved to help us survive, like having opposable thumbs or being able to run fast, our mental abilities probably evolved for the same reason. So, from the functionalist view, things like memory, problem solving, and even emotions are not random. They developed because they had a survival value. Let's say you feel fear when you hear a loud noise. From a functionalist perspective, that fear is not just an emotion. It is a part of an adaptive response. It makes you alert, helps you run away from danger, and increases your chances of staying alive. So mental processes are seen as tools for adaptation. Now, the main figure here is William James, who's often called the father of American psychology. His famous book, The Principles of Psychology, came out in 1890. In it, he described consciousness as a stream, always flowing, changing, never stopping. He didn't believe in chopping it into little pieces like the structuralists did. Instead, he asked, what is consciousness for? What work does it do for us? James also thought psychology should be practical. He believed that if we understand the purpose of mental processes, we can apply that knowledge to real life situations, education, work, health, relationships. This is why he's so central to functionalism. Another important figure is John Dewey. Dewey applied functionalist ideas to education. He argued that learning should prepare people to deal with real world problems, not just memorize facts. This was a big shift in how schools taught students. It made education more hands on and connected to life. Then we have James Rowland Angell. He gave a very clear outline of what functionalism is about. He said, number one, psychology studies mental operations, not mental elements. Number two, consciousness exists to help people adapt to their environment. And number three, the mind and body work together as a single unit. Now, how was this different from structuralism? Structuralists like Edward Titchener focused on analyzing the structure of the mind through introspection, very controlled experiments where people described their thoughts and sensations in detail. Functionalists thought that it was too narrow. They wanted to look at the mind in action in real situations, and they didn't limit themselves to introspection. They used multiple methods: observation, mental testing, studying children, studying animals, and looking at people with mental or physical problems. This broader approach made it easier to connect psychology with everyday life. This is actually where functionalism's role in applied psychology comes in, because if you study what the mind does in real situations, you can apply it to solve practical problems. For example, in education, you can design lessons that help students think critically instead of just memorizing. In industry, you can design work environments that make employees more efficient and satisfied. In mental health, you can create therapies that help people adapt better to challenges. Some other people connected to functionalism include G. Stanley Hall, who studied child development and adolescence, and Harvey Carr, who continued the Chicago school tradition of functionalist research. Their work kept the focus on how mental processes serve a purpose in everyday life. Now, of course, there were criticism of this school too. Some psychologists argued that functionalism was too broad and lacked a clear scientific method. They felt it was more of a philosophy than a strict science. Structuralists said functionalists were avoiding the hard job of carefully analyzing consciousness. Later, behaviorists like John Watson came along and said, why even study consciousness at all? It's too subjective. Behaviorists wanted to focus only on observable behavior, which they believed could be measured more accurately. And for a while, behaviorism became more popular in the United States. But here's the thing, functionalism didn't disappear. It sort of blended into later approaches. Its ideas about adaptation and the usefulness of behavior influenced educational psychology, clinical psychology, and even modern evolutionary psychology. In fact, if you look at fields like cognitive psychology today, you still see that functionalist question, what does this mental process do for us? So, to sum it up, functionalism was about what the mind does and why it does it. It moved psychology from focusing only on the structure of the mind to looking at how mental processes help people live and adapt. Even though it's not a separate school anymore, its influence is still strong in how psychology is taught, researched, and applied today. I hope you liked this video. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and make sure to comment about what improvements you'd like in the content, or if there are topics you want me to cover next. Your feedback really helps me make better videos for you. Thank you and take care.